can we learn from these stories? Here's the story. Here are the main facts about it. And let's reflect on, what are some of the lessons? What are some of the takeaways that we can learn from these stories that we can then also apply to our lives?
Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more month than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day and welcome to Give a Heck. On today's show, I welcome Mirella Acebo. Mirella is a certified life coach and mom, aka the Life Coach Mom. She has over 10 years of experience leading and teaching women in the area of self-improvement. She is teaching leader at an interdenominational Bible study where she lectures, leads seminars, and facilitates small group discussions. Her passion is to help the everyday busy mom rediscover who she is and what she wants in life apart from her roles as a wife and mother. She engages women in deep and meaningful conversations that help them get in touch with the part of themselves they may have set aside for the sake of their family. Her gentle and nurturing approach brings support, encouragement, and clarity to relationships that matter the most. Aside from her work as a life coach, Mirella is also a writer, actor, producer, and storyteller with over 15 years experience in the TV industry. She has appeared in many film, television, and national commercials. She and her family currently reside in Los Angeles, California. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Mirella. Thanks so much for agreeing to come on and share with us some of your life journey.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, I am as well. Our pre-conversation, the podcast listeners, sometimes our pre-conversations are the best, and I should have been recording. But that's okay. We're still going to deliver at 110% because we always give more than we should, and that's what your expectation is, and you deserve it. So I look forward to this. Mirella, tell me your origin story. We talked a little bit about this. For the new listeners or people watching on YouTube, I focus on a person's origin story because really in order for us to connect with Mirella and get to know, like, and trust her better, her vulnerability and ability to share some of the things that have gone on in her life from her earliest recollections are important for us to know and to understand and to communicate about. So please tell me your earliest recollections from childhood to adulthood that led you to where you're at currently, please.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised in Los Angeles. Let's start there. That's born perfect. Once upon a time.
Once upon a time when dinosaurs roamed the earth. Oh, sorry.
That's what it feels like sometimes. So no, I appreciate that comment. You're validating me right now. So born and raised in LA, born to a single mom, never met my dad. And that it was a struggle. There's a lot there. There's a lot there. So let me just back up a little bit more and even give you a little bit of my mom's backstory, because I think it's incredible as I think back to where she was at. And so she was born and raised on a ranch in Mexico, a very remote place in Mexico. And she had a 6th grade education. So she came from a big family. And so everybody was expected to work the ranch. That's what they did. And they only had education up until 6th grade. So she was raised there, and she would hear these stories about the United States, about living in Los Angeles. People would pass by and they would lodge there where she was living. And so that's where she would hear these stories from these passerbys. And so she had it on her brain. One day I'm going to make it to the United States and I'm going to go to Los Angeles because that's where dreams come true. That's the land of opportunity. And she did that in her early 20s. She came by herself. She came as an undocumented immigrant initially and working under the table, working as a nanny, as a housekeeper. She worked in a bakery as a caterer. And so she did that for many years. Eventually, she did become a citizen, and that was really one of the proudest days. She was so happy that she finally was able to accomplish that dream. So along the way, she was now in her mid 20s, late 20s, and she had met somebody and she got pregnant. And so he walked away. Now she was left with this decision. What am I going to do? As a single woman, undocumented, she did not speak English, and she has a sixth grade education. So she was already struggling to provide for herself. And now she's having to make a decision of, okay, what is this going to look like moving forward? And so she had made the decision to start a family, the two of us. This is the opportunity in front of me to raise this child, and I'm going to do that. And so it was a humble childhood, but a beautiful childhood in many ways. There was a lot of love, a lot of support. We lived really paycheck to paycheck for many, many years, probably up until my teenage years. And early on, my mom would rent rooms out of people's homes, and that's where we would live. And then once she became a citizen, she was able to secure a job, a full-time job with benefits and all of that. She got us our first studio apartment. And it was one big room, and we had a couch on one side and one bed. We shared a bed and a little kitchenette and bathroom and closet. And so I have memories of living there in those really humble beginnings. And for a while we were on food stamps. And I mention these things because as I think back to just my mom's really strength of character, that's one of the things that really stands out to me as I process my childhood, and I see her be such a strong example. And she was such a strong example to me as a little girl. I remember her saying to me, "This is only temporary. This struggle, like life's going to be hard in general." I learned that lesson really early on. Life is going to be hard. So I navigated life with that understanding. Like everything's going to be hard. Everything you want out of life is going to be a struggle. That's nothing new. So I learned a very healthy mindset around that whatever I aim for, I can achieve or at least work towards, which is better than not working towards anything at all, right? Whether or not that goal came true, you're working towards something. And so I remember going back to what I was sharing with you about food stamps. She really shared that with such conviction. This is for a time, for a short time only. We need assistance right now, but I want to work. I'm healthy. I know I can. And so that's one of the things that really stands out to me too, is that she was willing to get help, willing to get support from other people and friends and neighbors. And but she always just had this mindset, is like, this is just for a time. This is for right now. There's no shame in that. There's no guilt in that. The support is available, but I'm going to make a way. And so she really colored my upbringing with that narrative. And it's become part of my DNA that I can face anything. I've lived with very, very little. I've lived week to week, paycheck to paycheck as a dependent. And so as I've grown older and I've gone through my own seasons of insecurities or unknowns about what's going to happen in the future, I just rest in, okay, but I have enough for today. I have enough for this week. And that's okay. That's what helps me stay grounded, because I saw it role modeled in my own upbringing with my mom.
It keeps you talk about, it keeps you grounded. It keeps, what I hear is it kept you in the journey of life and appreciating it, because so many people are always, when they have too much in abundance, those listening, sometimes too much makes you not appreciate life. It actually makes you, because your things come too easy. I'm not saying that we all have to go through the struggle or the grind.
Mm.
But to me, your story and what you were just sharing, you learned so much from your mother, right? Living paycheck to paycheck. So many
Mm-hmm.
people have lived that. I've lived that in the
Mm-hmm.
last 20 years, just raising my kids as a single dad, 4 of my 5 kids full time. I understand that paycheck to paycheck, and, you know, thinking and teaching my kids the difference between needs and wants, and teaching them that, yeah, I know you want that and you're sad, but the reality is maybe
Right.
next week, right?
That's right.
Maybe
Yeah.
next month. But right now we've got the basics, we've got a roof over our head, we got food, and you've got love, you've got the basics of life, and we're
Yes.
just going to keep on pushing forward.
Yeah.
You talked about your mom with food stamps. Well, it's actually amazing to me how many people, if you're listening, because you may have technology and be in a tough spot, don't be afraid to go get help. Like, we have food
Mm-hmm.
banks in our city. I've helped people.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, I've given them food, but I can't give them enough. Even when I was struggling and I had a vehicle and they didn't, and I'd help take them to the food bank. And it's a humbling experience, even just to help people, to see people's heads hung low, like the shame that they
Mm-hmm.
feel, and
Right.
why.
Mm-hmm.
If we had the village mentality that society had, I don't know, let's say 100 and some years ago, nobody suffered. You'd have what did they have even in the US and Canada? They'd have ranches, they'd have a ranch of the rancher would take care, he'd own the community, usually the little village or the little town. He'd run the barber shop, he had the general store, he took care of everybody, made sure everybody was fed, and they were his workforce, but he was still taking care of the village. Nobody suffered. Nobody had to be embarrassed about needing support or help. And in today's society, people look down on one another because they need help with food.
Mm-hmm.
And I seen that shame. And honestly, I went there a few times with a few different people. I even took people because they wouldn't go on their own and they needed that support. They needed that help. And, trying to giving them uplifting, encouraging words. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, anybody listening, if you need support or help, that's what they're there for. And
That's
nobody
right.
there that's volunteering, because most of those food banks, or, even if you're using food stamp situations, they don't even utilize that in our country anymore. You have to go to a food bank. They don't really, they do have a system where you can go to certain grocery stores. I do know that because I have some clients that I've had over the years that have utilized that. But the people that are helping you aren't judging you. They wouldn't
Right.
be they wouldn't be doing that if they were into
That's
judging
right.
people, right?
Yes.
So
It's a gift. Right.
hold your head up high and do like you were just saying. It's only temporary, right? Like your
Right.
mom was teaching you. It's only temporary.
It's for
If you're
right
able
now.
to work, just keep on trudging forward. If you're looking for a job and you're having a hard time, it will materialize. Just keep in a good attitude and appreciate and have gratitude for getting up every single day, that you have another shot, that you have another opportunity to succeed, right? So
Right.
yeah, I've been there, done that in regards to living paycheck to paycheck, and you're so right, it is temporary. So you talked about the fact that you're raised by a single mom, you never knew your dad, and you ended up not having a lot of faith in men. Like, I can get that. I know a lot of people that feel that way, have been in similar circumstances, and that's just a natural progression of how you're going to feel, because your mom had to do it on her own. You didn't have somebody that was there to support her. So she's going to be your hero. She's going to be the person you're looking to for direction and focus. And I wouldn't like men either, right? Let's be real. So, but this eventually changed. You got married and had 2 kids. What was the defining moment that changed
Yeah.
and pivoted your mindset, though, to decide that men aren't so bad?
Yes. Well, I did go through a stage of what you described. Exactly. I don't need a man. My mom was able to do it. She was a role model for me. I'm going to do life on my own. I was very career minded. And my short answer to that is I hadn't met the right person, clearly, because when I met my husband, he changed my mind. And I thought, huh, there is a really good guy out there that is fit for me. Not to say that all the people I had dated were losers. Some were, and they proved my theory about men. And I made a ton of mistakes, and I dated all sorts of people. I also wasn't ready. My mindset at the time was, no, this is what I want to do. I'm going to have my career, and just family I don't see family fitting in that plan. I don't see a husband fitting in my plan. And so then as I matured, I got older, I graduated from college, and I had moved away to go to college. And then my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And so that's what brought me back to Los Angeles. I wanted to be there for her and walk her through that journey, or be with her in that journey. And wouldn't you know it, that's when I met my husband. I was not looking for a partner. I was not looking for a relationship at all. I mean, my priority was to take care of my mom. That's why I came back. And within 3 months or so, I met my husband through a mutual friend, and we started out as friends. And then we started to date more and more. And so what really won me over, not only did we really have a chemistry initially, early that first meeting, I was in a season of my life where my focus was my mom, caring for my mom. Now, remember, my mom did not speak English, and I'm speaking about her in past tense because she has since passed away. She passed away about 16 years ago. So that was my sole purpose for moving back, is setting up those appointments, making sure she's on the right medication, and tending overall to her whole health journey. And so when I met my now husband, when I met him, he walked that journey with me. He wasn't turned off by it. He didn't walk away. He knew she was my priority. And he walked that journey with me, and helped me and supported me, loved me through it, cared for my mom, cared for me. And so he won me over in that journey. And I saw his heart. I saw how genuine, how humble, how caring. He's a great caretaker. I often joke with him that, man, you should have been a paramedic or a doctor or something. Like he just naturally is a caretaking person. And so that's really what changed my mind. I was in that season of not looking for anybody, and then the right person came along, and
Well,
I just couldn't ignore it.
well, how could you? And then you have somebody that isn't just talk, right?
Right.
They're actually proving their heart. They're proving that they're
Yes.
somebody that is dependable and supportive. So many people today are a facade. They say one thing and they're completely different from what they say. They represent something different. And I always talk about that with people. If you were majority of the population that goes through the dating ritual, whatever you want to call it, they put down something on paper, or they represent something, or their friend sets you up and says, oh, this person is all this, they're just amazing. But if you open up the doors of their life, it removes all doubt. They aren't that person. They're a facade.
Yeah.
So you were blessed, but
Yeah.
it happened when it needed to happen, right? You had
That
that
too.
support.
Exactly. Oh,
Yeah.
I believe that too. And to your point about profiles in the dating world, I agree. You can write anything. I mean, we all sound amazing to ourselves from my own.
Yeah.
But
Bro.
with my husband, over time, I saw the consistency in his character. It wasn't just, oh, tell me about yourself. Oh, you're all these things. He lived it. He lived it out. And that takes time to really see in a person that you are
Well,
who you say you are.
in your mom was a person who lived by example too, right? She
Yes.
would say stuff to you that, this is only temporary, and she didn't sit back and wallow in it. She just continued to move forward right up
Yeah.
to right up to the day of her passing. She was a true warrior and didn't let things defeat her.
Mhm.
So finding a husband like that is perfect, right? Somebody that you can rely on, that's a true warrior, does what they say, right?
That's
And you
right.
can truly count and rely on them. That's fantastic. Congratulations. I haven't been so lucky yet. So I was married, 5 kids, but yeah, I've stopped to the extent of worrying about it, because I'm just going to wait for it to happen. And if it's meant to happen, it's meant to happen, right? So
Right. Yes.
easiest way, to less stress that way.
Yes. Yes.
So I wrote down some different things here, and we obviously have talked about it. Um, so your mom passed away, and you wondered who was now going to help you figure out how to raise your babies. You just had to figure it out and learned over time that motherhood is as much as experience and observation as it is experimental as well. On top of all of it, being a parent is an emotional roller coaster. I can contest to that as well, especially with 4 daughters of the 5
Oh,
kids.
you've got 4 girls. 4 girls and
Yes.
1 son.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So a little bit of an emotional roller coaster, and realizing that now that as I mentioned to you earlier, I've discovered that I'm an empath, realizing why I was always exhausted. It was
Yes.
like I'm a giant antenna picking up all their stuff. We won't say
That's a great analogy.
right.
You're right.
So
You're absolutely right.
so yeah, so it's an emotional roller coaster. There's no handbook to being a parent. Don't you wish there was?
Right.
You know, and as a mother, you decided to write a book that focused on things you wish you knew sooner. So you're a certified life coach and mom, aka the life coach mom, and you wrote a book called SOS for the mom, which started as an idea in your head, right? One day you just had this idea, you decided to write this book based on knowing 10 things you wish you would have known 10 years prior raising your kids. Tell us about the book and the process for the way that you describe each mom, their emotions, and what can one expect reading this book
Mhm.
at the end?
Yeah.
What how can it change their lives?
Yes. So my mom passed away when my kids were super young. My son was 9 months and my daughter was 2 years old. Um, it goes without saying that parenting in general, especially those early years of parenting, come with heavy emotions. Emotions were running my life and still do to this day to some degree if I'm not careful. And I learned a lot in those early years. And so one is I was grieving the loss of my mom. So I had been her caretaker for some time, and I was overwhelmed with a lot of emotion. She passed away, and then now I'm a new mom with no mom, so I'm grieving while at the same time also raising these children. Okay, so who's going to help me? And so I again felt what all of those emotions are very similar emotions. It's the overwhelm, the worry, the fear, and thinking about the future, and all of those things that come with motherhood. And something I like to say is that, because I feel like it's true, I think it's true, we're feeling our way through the day, through life, oftentimes. And let me back up even more. The why I focus on emotions is because we are emotional beings. As much as we are physical beings, we can see each other, we are intellectual beings, we have a mind, we can reason, we're spiritual beings. We're emotional beings as well. And so that's one aspect of how we can care for ourselves, is paying attention to the emotions, the heavy emotions, the feeling, the mindset that we're in any given moment, really, because those emotions can come quickly, and it's so easy to be dominated by them and to be reactive and to speak from that place of anger or rage or impatience or worry. And so we act on those feelings that we feel. So I didn't know all this stuff early on. I just know I'm feeling so much and I need help. I don't just need help in the right schedule and feeding my kids and putting them down for naps. Like, there's books about that. And that helped me to some degree, the logistics of raising children. But what I needed was really help internally with my emotions, with my heart, with all the things that I was battling inside. And I would go as far as saying that is the woman's battle, generally speaking, is our emotions taking control of us if we're not careful and mindful and intentional about identifying what it is we're feeling and then getting ahead of it or putting something in place that helps me govern my decisions, as opposed to being reactive all the time to my young kids and my teenagers and the stress and all of that. So, like you said, as I got older and as I matured as a person, as a woman, as a mother, I wanted to write a book that address some of these things and write a book to my younger self. This is really what I needed. I needed somebody to validate all the things that I was feeling and then speak to it from a faith perspective. So faith is a big part of my life. I was raised in a Christian home. And so that really does inform how I live. It informed how I lived there. I mean, then back in my childhood, and then I walked away from faith, from church, and lived my own life for a long time. And I came back. I came back to my faith with an open mind and really with a lot of questions, with a lot of doubt. Is this true? Is all this stuff that I was taught as a young kid, all these Bible stories that I heard, are they true? And how are they relevant to my life today? So I went on a journey, a faith journey, and rekindled my faith. So there was a spark there, and I just kept reading. I kept open. I kept being curious about it. And so that brings me to my book, is I not only wanted to unpack emotions, the common emotions that we feel as moms, and I only talk about 10. So my book is 10 chapters. I cover 10 quote unquote mom emotions. So emotions that are common to moms, but they're common to everybody because we're humans and humans have emotions. And so 10 emotions and then 10 Bible moms that we can learn from. So as I was starting to reflect on this idea, I want to write a book and it's going to address the emotions and it's going to be an encouraging, supportive book. How do we manage our emotions? Who can help us manage our emotions? If only there were moms that I knew about. Wait a minute. As I revisited scripture and I read through Genesis, I really was camping on the stories that I was raised learning about. And I really wanted to bring these women to life. So beginning with Eve, for example, what can we learn about her failure in the garden? She was tempted, she gave into a decision, and I just got curious, like, what was life after that? Was she remorseful? Did she feel guilty about making the wrong decision, right? And so as I was sort of processing that story, I thought, wait a minute, I feel like Eve. I feel like I have a little bit of Eve in me, and Sarah and Rebecca and Leah, like all of these Bible moms. I'm impatient too. Sarah was impatient. I always learn about the story about Sarah, how God promised her this baby. She waited and waited. The baby didn't come. She was impatient. That was the lesson that I remember hearing. And I thought, wait a minute. She waited 25 years. That's a long time. I can't even wait sometimes to lunch. I'm so hungry. Wait a minute. Let me think about this. Impatience. Where do I see impatience rising up in me in parenting, in motherhood? Impatience is a big one for us. So I started really attaching an emotion and exploring it. Could these women have felt these things? Could Eve have been plagued with mom guilt all of her life? Sarah, Noah's wife, she's not even named in the Bible, but God gives Noah and his wife this biggest assignment of their life. You're going to build this ark. You're going to live in it. And then we're going to repopulate the earth after I wipe out the world. Okay, that sounds pretty overwhelming. That's an incredible mission. Was she overwhelmed? And so once I started looking at these stories through the lens of different emotions, I thought, you know what? There's something here. It's reasonable to think they had, I know they had emotions. They were people, and emotions are emotions. Human nature is human nature, no matter where you are in history. And so was she overwhelmed? I mean, that sounds overwhelming to me, to live on an ark for a year, taking care of animals and your family. I know I was overwhelmed in COVID when we were in quarantine, and we did that for however long, and we didn't know how we were going to come out on the other end. So I saw some parallels there with Noah and his family and our lives today. And so I just continued on exploring these different stories, focusing on the mom, her role, her heart, the emotions she might have felt. I don't know for sure. The Bible doesn't tell us, because the Bible isn't a self-help book. It's not a book that focuses on emotions. It's a book that focuses on God's story of redeeming humanity. So I gave myself some liberties to do this, to be curious about it. I'm an actor as well. So I've been in the industry for 15, 16 years now. And so I naturally am just curious about people in general. And so as an actor, as I get a script and I read through the script and I see the character that I'm playing, I read through it. How do I bring her to life? Well, I look at the story and I go, okay, so what's motivating her? What's driving her decisions? What is she trying to get out of? What is she aiming for in this scene? And so I brought all of that skill set, that natural curiosity to these Bible stories. And I wanted to breathe life into these women and say to other moms, you're not alone in feeling what you're feeling. Let's look to scripture as inspiration. Let's look to some of these stories that we're very familiar with. And can we just be open to the possibility that they too, wow, they were overwhelmed with worry, with fear, with mom guilt, loneliness in marriage. There's a story in the Bible about that. It's Hagar. Hagar, going back to Sarah's story, Hagar was the one, Sarah had Hagar sleep with her husband to have this baby, and she jumped the gun. That was Sarah's plan. It wasn't God's plan for Hagar to have this baby. And so she has this baby. And now Sarah says, you know what? That woman and her kid, they've got to go. And so they get kicked into the wilderness. Like, I'm sorry, thanks, but you got to go. And so I talk about being a single mom. She was a single mom. She was abandoned by Abraham in the wilderness. So that's an overview. I know I'm going deep into some of these stories, but I wanted to tell these Bible stories in a very conversational way for those that maybe aren't even familiar with the stories. Maybe you don't even believe in scripture, but can we learn from these stories? Here's the story. Here are the main facts about it. And let's reflect on, what are some of the lessons? What are some of the takeaways that we can learn from these stories that we can then also apply to our lives?
And yeah, you bring up the fact of the lessons or what the Bible can teach us. And as you said, it's God's story of redemption of humankind. I look at all the people out there that are educating and teaching today from some of the most famous people. Look at Napoleon Hill, for an example. Look at all the, even any of these famous people that are teaching, a lot of the lessons of what they're talking about can be found in the Bible, right? The stories can be found in the Bible. It's not like there's a reason why it's the number one selling book every year on year in the world, which is
Yes.
the Bible. There's a
Right.
reason why it's attractive to people to learn. So it's great that you've done this, that you've made it, because life's already grips us on a daily basis, right? People listening, you have circumstances where you live on a hamster wheel. You go to work, go home, get paid, you come home to your trials and tribulations, whether you're a single parent, whether you're in a relationship, maybe it's a relationship where it's one-sided, and you just have all this confusion and stuff going on in your brain. And moms take a lot of it, the blunt of it. So it's great to know that there's a book out there that they can go and read that ties to the oldest book that we know, right?
Yes. Yes.
And it makes it, some people might not appreciate it, but it dumbs it down for them, because the Bible can be very overwhelming. I'm a Christian as well, right? A practicing Christian. It can be very overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
And it's so important that people, like, I look at a book that I was trying to understand the Gospels, and I got recommended by a priest years ago, a book called Case for Jesus. And literally explained things that I couldn't interpret myself, because I'm a human, right? I
Yes.
interpret things based on my circumstances. Am I suffering from too much depression, anxiety? Am I overwhelmed by bills? Am I overwhelmed by one of my kids and what they're doing, or whatever the case may be? So I think your book could even help men out, to be honest, just from listening to you,
Well, I
right?
appreciate you saying that. Yeah, I've had
Yeah,
some feedback from some of my
yeah,
readers who said this should be mandatory reading for the husbands as well, to
yeah.
help them understand how much we carry as women and as moms, the
Oh,
emotional
it's
responsibility. We feel
huge.
so responsible, not just for our kids, but everybody's well-being, their physical well-being and their emotional well-being, and how are they doing, and that's a reflection on me, and then we start feeling guilty and we're hard on ourselves.
Oh, trust me. Like when you were talking, I was thinking, my gosh, last time I checked, I'm a man, but I can so relate to what you're talking about, because I was that single dude. And even when I was still married and we had our kids and they were all so young, I felt helpless, because I know even today their mother is still going through, her 6 inches between her ears are still messed up.
Mm,
She's never ever figured it out. I, of course, eventually figured it out. I've been on a personal development and, journey for this is 30 years. I started in 93. I still remember the first books that I read. Yes,
really?
readers, I actually read books. I didn't rely on Audible like I do today, because it's Audible. I just find it makes it way easier. And I like listening to people talk the story, right? To tell me
Yeah.
what was in between the pages. So listeners, because I do have dudes that listen to the show, I think this book is going to be a great read for myself as well. There's always something we can learn from others, though.
Mm-hmm.
But the
I believe
key,
that.
but the key is to have that open mind, right? To have that open mindset. You talked about, how young your kids were when your mom passed away, and dealing with all the emotions around the loss of your mom and feeling like, who's going to help now? Like, I look at my parents who are still living, how much they helped me when I was still married, when I was divorced, and then become a full-time dad of my kids years after the fact. That emotional support, those listening, the reason I bring this up specific is, don't take it for granted, because
Mm-hmm.
Mirella didn't have that ability to take it for granted and wish
Mm-hmm.
she had it. And then there's people that have it and they take it for granted, and they abuse it. Don't abuse those that love you, your parents, your own mother that's supporting you and helping you. Realize they're human beings that have their own emotional
That's right.
things going on. So keep it balanced, be
Yeah.
appreciative, have gratefulness and gratitude if you do have the support, because again, you would have loved to have had that support and never had the ability to have that gratefulness. The gratefulness that I do hear that you have, though, is that your mom always was telling you, this is just temporary. We're going to
Yes.
move forward. And your mom did your best, from even getting that first studio apartment. And you talk about, you shared a bed, you had the couch, all that stuff. That's all ingrained in you. Your mom gave that to you, gave
Yeah.
you that ability to understand that you can have a minimalist life and still have a great life.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can have the people that have everything and they're miserable. I have clients that have
Mm-hmm.
everything and they're not happy, right?
Yes, you're so right. Yeah, I'm
Appreciate
realizing
what
like,
you
wow,
have.
what a gift that was. The gift
Your
and it
mom give you a gift that you could,
monetary. It wasn't monetary, it wasn't material, it wasn't.
yeah,
Example she led. It was the strength of character and the mindset before this was a thing. I mean, maybe self-development and all that was there back then, but it wasn't in our lives. Like she has a sixth grade education. She could barely read and write.
well,
But
who's
this
going to teach you that, though?
carefully
Who's going to
to her.
teach you about self-development and doing that stuff? Because everything in our life is learned behavior. So I didn't get that from my parents. My dad, entrepreneur, very successful entrepreneur, taught me lots of lessons, tons. My mom, very compassionate, caring. She taught me lots of lessons, learned behavior. But the
Mhm.
self-development world, that was foreign to me. It was somebody outside of my life, outside of my sphere of my little life, that
Yeah.
approached me and said, "Hey, this is things I've noticed. I think you should read this book. Here's this." You know what I mean? It was all done out of love, right? It wasn't done
Yeah.
out of being ignorant. So we need to go out and talk about self-development, personal development, living
Mhm.
purposeful, right? That's why when I wrote my book, very light read, but it's designed to teach people. Here's my origin. So my book is based on my podcast. The only same sort of idea, not based on a podcast, but my podcast is the same. Starts at the origin, and peels back the layers of the onion and gets to the meat of what did that do to help you get to where you are today. And you're perfect for that. Like your whole life has been lessons that you were taught by your mom, and then you had the ability to have interaction from outside things that made you, number one being the Bible. Obviously wouldn't have your book if you wouldn't have come back to Christianity and got into the Bible and wrote your book. You wouldn't have continued to develop to where you are today. Obviously, like
That's
I
right.
can appreciate the fact that you're an actor and you've done that, but I think the most, I don't know enough about that part of your life, but the most fulfilling thing for serving people that I can tell right now is your book. And gentlemen, go out and get it. I'm actually going to order it. I think it would be, I don't read books very often. Again, most of the things I buy are on Audible, but most people don't put their books on Audible. It's not as easy as you think to get your
I
book.
know that's next on my list.
I'm still working. I'm still working on mine. I have a company I hired now because it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for writing the book. I'm going to thank you for all the moms out there that are listening, or even men that'll eventually, you know, grab your book, learn from it. And your book isn't just about teaching through those stories. That book, your book, part of me, could be something that brings people back to Christianity, brings them back to Jesus, right? So I think
Very
that's
much that. Yes.
yeah, right. It could, maybe they're hanging by a thread. Maybe they've done like you and left and just, discounted it. And I have people like that in my life too, that somebody just recently that said to me, yeah, I walked away from all of it, but then I got into this relationship, and the person said to me, well, why don't you believe in God? And they couldn't explain why they had stopped. They just stopped. So it made them question. And your book's going to make people question, right? And make them
Yes.
understand and come
I
closer to
appreciate
their
you saying
faith.
that. Yeah,
Right?
that's part of the heart of the book. I mean, I know God is the one that changes hearts and draws people to himself, but if he could use my book and the way I explain the stories as I understand them, then that would be an incredible, gift to
Well,
me.
I believe that it wouldn't have happened though without God, right?
That's
In the
right.
sense, in the
What would not
sense,
have happened? Not in
yeah,
this
because
version of it.
we always think that we're, you know, all that, and that we're the best. I had this idea today, and I forget to be grateful to God for allowing me to have that idea, or to
Mhm.
be able to present it so that other people can understand my idea or what I'm trying to relate or educate them. So,
Yeah.
God's always in our lives. For those listeners, because I do have listeners that are, don't believe in God. I have
Mhm.
atheist listeners. I have agnostic. I have everything that you can think of, and that's fine. They understand that everybody's got a different belief. That's another thing. So whoever's listening, appreciate everybody for who they are, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Appreciate them for their
I agree.
uniqueness. They don't
Mhm.
have to be you. You do you the best you can. And yeah, just wake up every day, be grateful, go to bed at night, be grateful. Anything that happens in between, like you said, we can have those emotional roller coasters. Moms have them, dads have them. Just
Yeah.
there's things that I teach people on how to never have a bad day. And it's stuff that I've developed and worked on for 5 years. So
Mm.
there's so many things that we can do to appreciate our lives. But I appreciate the fact of your book, like listening to you talk about it, and it draws me closer to my faith too, right? And
Oh, I'm glad.
I don't know
Yeah.
if you live by core values at all? Do you understand what core values are?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I live by simply three core values in this order: faith, family, and work. My faith is
Mm-hmm.
my number one core value, because if I don't have my faith, it's hard for me to control those moments where I have super anxiety issues. I understand my triggers. I've had to figure all that stuff out over the years. And, if my faith is solid, my family always benefits. I'm more
Yes. That's
compassionate.
right.
I'm more
That's
kind.
right.
I'm able to handle that emotional roller coaster better. I'm able to look at things that look insurmountable
Yeah.
and climb over them. Right. And
Yes.
it's because of my faith. And work is just because I'm not materialistic. It's just like you were saying, we need money to survive.
Mm-hmm.
But if you live a life, those listening, if you live a life for materialistic things, it,
Mm.
it every time 21 years of dealing with clients, it's a shallow existence.
Yes.
You don't have the healthiest relationships with your significant other, your friends, your family, even your work associates. It's just, we need to understand in life that we need to be people that are kind to one another.
Mm.
Whatever your core values are, people that are listening, or even you, Mirella,
Mm-hmm.
I find that the more I stay grounded to my faith and appreciate the fact that I'm even alive today, that I got another shot, that I get
That's
to
right.
speak to you, is amazing. Like
Yeah.
this is a gift in itself,
It's same. Yeah,
right?
exactly. Exactly.
So what piece of actionable advice do you have for women who feel all the things that we've been talking about, the mom guilt, the worry, the overwhelm, being lonely? Because I've been there as a dad too, being lonely as a parent. What actionable advice could you give somebody without them even reading the book?
Mm-hmm. Well, one is to validate the emotion, not to judge the emotion. I would tell the person, the woman, the mom, the man, the father, not to stand in judgment of the emotion. It's okay to have an emotional reaction about something you care about, someone you care about, a situation, to recognize it. So validate it, acknowledge it, recognize it, welcome it for what it has to offer you. It's a perspective, but it's only one perspective. It's only one way to feel. And this takes work. It really does. It takes being proactive about a tendency that you might have, to maybe to go into rage or to be explosive or be very reactionary. It's just acknowledging, okay, this is sort of where I go when something happens, understanding that about yourself. And then if you truly want to change it, you have to change it. You have to change your mind or change something. So overriding, acknowledging the emotion, welcoming it in. It's here for me. It's helping me in some way, maybe to survive this situation, this moment. But also I have a choice. It can control me or I can control me. I can let the emotion control me, or I can let my decision to govern myself differently take charge. And the illustration I like to use is when I walk my dog. I have a dog who I walk every day. We take a good 30-minute walk, and there are times that she is really tugging at that retractable leash, and she's at the end. She's far ahead of me, and I'm constantly fighting her to get close, get close. And I equate that to our emotions. Is sometimes our emotions are getting the best of us. They're tugging at us, and we're naturally just in agreement with the emotion and then carrying ourselves based on that emotion, where no, we can remind ourselves, okay, I'm the human in this situation. I have hopefully a sound mind, or I have the capacity to think through a situation and then to react or respond in a more disciplined way.
Which
So,
is, I love how you put that, react or respond. I recently read some things here recently about, you talk about validating the emotion, and it's okay to react to an emotion. I
mhm,
read though that the biggest problem with people is when they have that emotional outburst or whatever that they're feeling, they're overwhelmed, is that you have less than a minute to actually reconcile that emotion, or it puts you into the negative, right?
yes.
So you can acknowledge that emotion. I don't know, the reason I bring that up to see what your take is on that, because there's so many times that I'll have something come up, even when my kids were growing up, and they come to me and they'd be like, "Wow," and I'd just be like,
Right,
"Whoa,"
right.
right? So then I'm having a reaction to my emotions, and then because I didn't really work on it, train my brain, because really it is a habit that you can develop to acknowledge it, acknowledge that the emotion, and now how am I going to respond and react to it? Am I going to take a deep breath? Am I going
Mhm,
to say, hey, such and such, this is triggering this in me.
mhm,
Can we dial it down and we visit this in 20 minutes? Can we visit this in
exactly.
an hour?
Yes.
I used to practice that with my kids. Was I successful all the time? No. Did I try all the time? Yes.
We're not feeling this all the time. No,
Yeah.
but it's okay to say, okay, time out. I just need a minute. This is a lot right now, to acknowledge what you need in that moment. what you need, what you
Yeah.
want in that moment, and then care for yourself before you say something that you're going to regret later or
And
be
doesn't
embarrassed
that
about,
happen a
right?
lot though? Doesn't that happen a
Oh,
lot?
yes,
People,
all the
people,
time.
people are it's coming out and they're going, give me those back. I don't want to,
Yes,
I
right,
want
right.
to pull those words back. It's too late. Once
Now
you open,
you're embarrassed and you're regretful,
oh my
you're
gosh.
ashamed, and then that lasts a lot longer than if we care for ourselves in that moment. And so something I say
Acknowledge, yeah.
really quickly is when you feel something, you say something and then do something. So if you recognize the feeling, okay, I'm feeling something, say something. So you can say that out loud as you did in your example. Whoa, this is a lot. I'm overwhelmed. Okay, you're recognizing that emotion, overwhelmed. So you feel something, you say something, you do something. So what is your action? Maybe it is, I just need a minute. I need 5 minutes. You know what? Let me get back to this. It does take practice. It's a pattern. So
Well, you're also training the people around you, though. The people that
yes.
you love and care about the most that are in your sphere of influence and you're in theirs, you are training them. Because I sometimes was, even with my one adult daughter, because I have anxiety triggers and I know what'll trigger my anxiety. I know those triggers, I know how to deal with it. And I'll say to her, you know what, this is just too much. I'm
Mhm.
dad suffering from, I'm getting, I can feel my triggers.
Yes.
And then she'll say to me, you know, if you don't, even when you train people properly, she'll say to me, well, I'm not, something will happen and I'll find out about it. And I'll say, well, why didn't you talk to it about it? Well, you suffer from anxiety all the time. So let's throw it in your face. Guess what, people? Your
Mhm.
emotions can be thrown back at you. And
Mhm.
you need to be tough about it and realize that they may not be at the same level of their emotional journey as you are.
Yes.
So talk to them about it, be open
That's right.
about it, train them because you trained yourself or maybe somebody else trained you. Pass the buck in a good way.
Yes. That's right. Yeah. And that's what we're doing as parents. And especially if they're still in our home as underage, as dependents, is we are setting an example and we're training them, whether we're doing it intentionally or not, because they're seeing what we do. We're role modeling really every reaction we have to things, to life stressors. So if I'm overwhelmed and I'm handling overwhelm in a not so healthy way, they're seeing that. Now, if I learn to react in ways that I'm proud of, I can say, oh, I really handled that well. I'm also role modeling that for them without even saying it. I mean, it's great to have the conversations too, as organically as they come up. Our homes are training centers, and I think our homes are also training centers in ways for us to teach them how to manage our emotions.
Yeah. And, you know, at the end of the day, we're all human. If you lose it and you don't catch it because we're all human, be responsible in the sense that don't be afraid to apologize
Yes,
with sincerity though.
right.
I can't stand empty apologies. And we get them every single day in our world where people tell you what they think you want to hear
Yeah,
to, you know, smooth over what's gone on. Just have
yeah,
open conversation and say, you know what, like that was tough for me, especially with my girls. You know, I have a long fuse, but sometimes I would get upset at them and we would get into you know, heated conversation and they'd take off. It was tough though because so many people will go, well, they're my kids. They can't do what I can do, and I get to get away with stuff. No, they're just, you know, younger versions of what
mm-hmm.
they're going to become, which is an
Mm-hmm.
adult. And it's your responsibility to show them that it's okay to make mistakes and go knock, 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 open the door. You know what? Earlier on, dad was saying this and that. I apologize. You know, can we have a conversation about it? I shouldn't have said that. You know, oh, that's okay, dad. No, it's never okay for me to respond or react that way. This is
I
what should
love
have happened.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's
it was tough. I
great.
still do that today. No, it's never okay for me to act like that, but that's our human response. Oh, that's okay.
Yes, it is.
Because we're uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
that's our shield. That's our protection. We're gonna say, oh, that's okay, Mirella, that you just told me I'm a jerk.
Yeah.
Right. Whether I'm a jerk or not, you feel bad for saying it. And oh, that's okay. No, let's get to the root of it. Why does Mirella think I'm a jerk? What did I do? What was my part in this? Right. Let's have
Yeah.
that open
Right.
conversation because there's always could be 70-30, 80-20, 50-50, but something doesn't happen without interaction from the other party. So there's,
Right.
acknowledgement, admittance of where we're at in our own journey, and working with people to become better. Because if you stay stagnant
Yeah.
and just, oh, that's okay, they deserved it, or,
Yeah.
or whatever the case is.
I appreciate what you're saying, because ultimately I am responsible for myself, for my own reactions, how I'm handling things in a situation. I'm not responsible for the other person. So just by owning my part, my role in a conversation that got heated or just escalated to a place I really didn't want to own it. It just feels so good. I'm telling on myself, basically. I'm saying, this is how I handled myself. And that's not that's not the standard I want. Like for you, this is where the core values come in super important. Like for you, you said faith, family, and work,
Yeah.
right? And just to go back to, yeah, this is what I've set for myself, the standard that how I want to live and conduct myself through faith, family. And so just that reorients us. It brings us back as an
It
anchor.
grounds us. Yeah. Yeah. And,
Mhm.
it's okay sometimes too, even if my core inner self and my 6 inches between your ears is going, you know, you were right, blah, blah, blah. Right? Would you rather be happy or right?
Yes,
I'd rather
exactly.
be happy.
That's right.
I'd rather take more responsibility and be that person that's the bigger person. Not to say the other person can't be, but the way I look at it, whether it's dealing with an individual or it's a family member, maybe it's just a friend, I'd rather own it and just take on more of the ownership, because sometimes it's just easier. And sometimes it can be, when I've done that, it's a trigger for them to go, well, no, actually, I did
Mhm.
this and that. Is it going to always be that way? No. But guess
Right.
what? Without trying, you're never going to know. You're just going
That's
to
right.
always think that the end all be all of life, and that you're perfect, because nobody's perfect. The only person that was ever perfect has been gone from the world for a couple thousand years. So,
Mhm.
we just need to keep on moving forward and try
Yeah.
and have conversations with great people like you, and try to elevate who we are emotionally and how we deal with it, and how can we better ourselves.
Yeah.
Your
That's right.
tribe, your circle, your
Yep.
associations is so important.
That's right. Yeah. And even admitting, going back to what you're saying, admitting our part, our role in it's oh, I lost my train of thought, but I was going to say admitting, acknowledging it, how it de-escalates a situation. It's very winsome, or it can be. Going back to your point of, this is how I'm going to own, my actions or my words in this moment, and how that, oh, okay, it may very well lower the defenses in the other person, because like, I'm gonna speak up first and say, yeah, I'm sorry about what happened. This is what I said. I shouldn't have said that. And how welcoming that is for the other person. Go, oh, okay. You know what? They tend to mirror how we approach something. Not always, but in the end, again, I'm responsible for myself in the end.
Yeah. Well, our emotional IQs are all different, right? So,
Yeah.
as you said, by going in and admitting first, that person might not have the emotional IQ or the
Right.
intelligence to be able to do that first. And
That's
by
right.
doing that, you're teaching. It's always back to
Yes.
ownership.
Yeah.
Can be a teaching moment, can be a teaching lesson. And is it uncomfortable? Absolutely. It can be uncomfortable, but life is so much happier, right? When you just
Yeah.
own your own stuff and be responsible for you. There's going to be people that project when you go to do that as well, that'll go, and you did this and you did that. You're going to learn to have that shield and go, okay, I hear what you're saying. Let's
Yeah.
deal with this first, and we can talk about that, because sometimes people's emotional intelligence will make them want to elevate back to the anger, not to
Yeah.
have a calm resolve. I've seen that a lot
Yes.
too, right?
That is true too. Yeah. So it's on us to, I heard this recently and I love it, to have a thick skin, but a soft heart, right? We have to have that thick skin. Yeah. People are going to say things too, exactly what you're saying. It's just that we're
Yeah.
on different places in the spectrum of emotional maturity.
Yeah,
And
and we can mature together. Somebody
yeah,
that I've had people in my life that their emotional maturity was non-existent to now where they're in my life 10, 15, 20 years later where we're equals in emotional maturity because they decided they didn't want to stay stuck anymore,
yes,
right?
right.
And with encouragement, associations, bringing them into groups of people where we're all working to be, to better ourselves has helped them. And they've brought things that never discount the people that are low on the emotional scale, what they can bring to the table too,
Yeah,
because they have stories, they have things that you've never experienced. They might trigger your heartstrings
yeah,
and they can help you grow and develop. So it's just
mhm,
about being kind and giving people their shot. Everybody deserves a shot to
yeah,
grow and change, right?
yes, that's right.
So Morelli, you mentioned that self-care for the soul is important, that it's so important that women prioritize their emotional well-being as a mom. What is first and foremost the number one thing a mom must do in order to protect and start uplifting their soul?
Mm. To recognize the areas that do need healing or tending to, acknowledging, right? We can't fix or elevate or heal any area of ourselves that isn't even acknowledged. So I think
So,
acknowledging, yeah, is that what you mean?
yeah, well, it- it- absolutely. Like, what do they need to work on? How do they who do they reach out to though? Like somebody's listening and yes, they could reach out to you. Maybe they're not comfortable. Is there things that you can recommend that they do to in order to work on it? Maybe read things that they
Mhm.
could listen to that could help uplift their soul. Obviously, reaching out to you would be fantastic. Picking up your
Yes,
book would be fantastic, but
that's
maybe
right.
they're not at that stage. What would be that starting stage for them to start? Reading a book, listening to a podcast. Do you have any recommendations for
I think
people outside of yourself?
I think all of the above is recognizing, I go back to what I shared earlier, is that there are many parts to us. We're physical beings, intellectual beings, spiritual beings, emotional beings. So I'm just even going to start there. And there's probably other facets to us. And so I think caring for yourself in every one of those areas. So imagining a pie chart, right? It's important for us to take care of ourselves physically. So we feel good. So our bodies can do what they're responsible for doing. And so we naturally will feel better if we're taking good care of ourselves. And intellectually too, I think we're designed to learn and grow intellectually, learning something new, caring for yourself and in that way. And so the women sometimes that I talk to, they've forgotten what they enjoy doing. They've forgotten because their identity has become, I'm a mother now, I am a wife now, and I'm responsible for everybody else around me to make sure that everybody else's needs are being taken care of. And they've forgotten, wow, do I like Coke or Pepsi? I mean, that's a silly example, but who am I? I've forgotten that because I'm distracted by meeting everybody else's needs. So understand, okay, who am I? And just intellectual and getting to know yourself, and then allowing yourself to grow in these areas, physically, intellectually, spiritually. For me, that is my number one. I'm always going to go there. Like, okay, so tell me about that relationship. Do you have a relationship with the Lord? What is your belief system? And helping the person nurture that connection, whatever it is that they believe, just respecting that. And then the emotional part too, recognizing we're human beings on this emotional journey of life, and we're not going to get it right all the time. We're not doing everything perfectly, but we can strive to make strides in all of these areas. And I think that's a great start. It's an all-encompassing, well-rounded place to start, is to tend to those areas, those big
Yeah.
areas.
Well, you mentioned though that we get so wrapped up, especially moms, mothers, right? They get wrapped up in the family's needs that they lose their own identity. So, you
Mhm.
know, they don't know where to start to get their own identity back because even on the journey of trying to figure it out, they get caught up again because all of a sudden now there is a child that has this angst going on. Maybe
Right.
their husband's got this angst going on. Maybe they're a single mom and they're the only pivotal point for everything to come toward them. And they just go to bed at night. I talk about it all the time. So losing your identity is, to me, is you live a life of quiet desperation. You don't
Mhm.
have any grounding mechanism. And I know for me, faith's been huge. It helped me through, my unfortunate divorce. It's helped me through raising my kids of my own. They're all adults now. It still helps me to today. So for
Yeah.
me, number one thing that you mentioned was what's your tie to your faith? Do you have faith? Do you
Right.
believe in God? Right? Because it
Sure.
is,
That conversation. Yeah.
well, if you can believe in God, you definitely have faith because it's the unknown, right? It's an unknown in the sense that you've never physically seen him.
Mm-hmm.
You've never physically seen Jesus. You've never physically had God. Maybe you have. Maybe somebody who listening's
Right.
had that. I don't
Okay.
know. I don't want to make that
Either.
that judgment. But I know myself, if you can come to your faith and you can have belief in something that you haven't physically touched or seen, it's a great starting launching
Mm-hmm.
point for your life, for
Mm-hmm.
everything to come into place. So,
Mm-hmm.
Mirella, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
Give a heck about your emotional well-being. I'm always going to go back to that because I'm so
Perfect.
passionate about it. So give a heck about it. Yes, get curious about your own emotions day to day on a weekly basis. What are some of those habits that you fall into? And if you want to make a change, it is possible to change and improve your life in general.
Yeah, there's always more that we can improve in our lives. Like people say to me, well, when are you going to stop with that self-development and going and doing this stuff? Never, till the day I take my last
Sure.
breath. Well,
I know.
you're never satisfied. You're right, I'm not. I'm
You're
not
right. Yeah.
satisfied.
Because we're always unfinished, and that's
Yeah,
okay. We're always working on something if we choose to be, and if we're looking for those areas that we want to improve in. And that's going to improve our
absolutely.
quality of life.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So our time is almost up. I want to respect our listeners and your time. What's the best way that people can reach you?
Yeah. So I am on, let's see, Instagram, if you want to follow me there, Life Coaching by Mirella. And Mirella is spelled Mirella. I have a YouTube channel. I'm not super active on it, but that's Life Coaching by Mirella as well. So I dabbled in that during COVID. So those videos are old, but my content is definitely out there. You can email me. I would love to hear how you were encouraged, either by this podcast or through the book. So if you want to reach out to me, life coaching by Mirella at yahoo.com. And then go to my website. I'll end with that. My website, that's where you can find my book. My book is on Amazon, and it's called SOS for the MOM. So in other words, mom, SOS for the mom. It's a Christian mom's guide to managing emotions. And my website is www.lifecoachmom.net. And then I also have one that's my name, MirellaAcebo.com. That's a
Fantastic.
lot
I'll
of
make
information. That was a mouthful.
it'll all go into the show notes. For those new to the
Okay.
show, you can go to giveaheck.com, go into the podcast portal. You'll see Mirella's smiling face, and below that, you'll see the abbreviated show notes. We'll have the links to her social media profiles, as well as where you can find her book, so that you can, one-stop shop. Just come in and join the world that is Mirella.
Join
Right?
Mirella's world.
Yeah, yeah. I think that would be a pretty great place to be. So I
Oh,
appreciate
I
you being
appreciate
on.
it. Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you, Dwight.
no problem. Any last thing that you would like to say before I wrap up the show?
This was a joy. It really was. And you helped me just explore new things. And I very much enjoyed our conversation. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, I did too as well. Yeah, it's always great to have a conversation with somebody that's going to make you have those aha moments, right?
Yes.
And we don't have enough of those in our day. We Coasting through life is boring.
Yeah, that's right. Autopilot. That's the old us.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the new
I
us.
don't. That was the old us, or the old me that had hair.
The head hair. That was the old me. Yeah. Before
Yeah,
grade.
yeah.
There's something to be said about that, though.
Exactly. Maturity.
Yes.
So thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Mirella. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck. Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments. This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.